Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice Community Gathering. My name is Asha Dyer. I am a member of the RCRC Board of Directors, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this discussion today where you will meet our RCRC staff, be introduced to our wonderful programs, and learn about ways you can join us in taking action at such a critical moment in our nation. We're seeing an increased attack on reproductive freedom and bodily autonomy, especially with the Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade last month. At the end of the session, we will take some of your questions, so please feel free to post in the Q&A box throughout our conversations. This gathering is in webinar format so that we can record it while also maintaining your anonymity. Something that we like to do with our live guests is ask that you say hello, share who you are, and where you are located in the chat box. Over the next hour, you will hear our team talk about why they do the work they do. So I figured it would be a good time to also share why I serve on the board. As someone who was raised in the conservative evangelical church, there was no room for me to decide my own stance when it came to abortion. I believed what I was told from the pulpit about who to vote for and the language we used when it came to abortion. After leaving the church in 2013 due to a divorce, I went on a journey learning about reproductive rights and its history in the United States for the first time. I learned about the close ties the pro-life movement had with racism, and I also learned how many women from my former church were secretly getting abortions, but who were too fearful of ever talking about it openly. Once I saw the data and heard individual abortion stories, I knew that there was more to this issue than the black and white narrative I had been taught. While on this journey, I connected with Reverend Katie Zay on Twitter, who was part of a handful of progressive voices of faith championing reproductive freedom that I was excited to follow and learn from. In 2021, she asked me to serve on the board of RCRC, and it was an immediate yes. Being part of a faith-led organization that has been fighting for reproductive choice since 1967 is a huge honor. And to be amongst an inclusive and diverse community of board members and staff shows me that we are experiencing an opportune time to speak loudly and boldly for the right of every person to decide their own reproductive choices. It is now my honor to introduce you to RCRC CEO, Reverend Katie Zay.
Oh, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Asha. Hi, everybody. It is so good to be with so many of you. I've been watching the chat. We've got people from all over. I'm Reverend Katie Zay. I'm the CEO of RCRC, and I have been around this organization for a long time. I actually started as a participant in RCRC's program 17 years ago. When I was a young seminary student, I enrolled in what we now call our compassionate care trainings. And I was also a member of our Spiritual Youth for Reproductive Freedom, or SURF program. You'll be hearing more about what that looks like for today's world in just a little bit. For those of you who might be new to RCRC, welcome. And I want to take a few minutes to share a little bit about who we are and who we have been. RCRC is a multi-faith movement, bringing the moral imperative of our religious teachings and values to the work of reproductive freedom and dignity. We do that through a lot of different ways. We bring education and we equip people. We do spiritual accompaniment work, and we engage in community action. Now, our roots, you might have heard, are in the Clergy Consultation service on abortion, started by Reverend Howard Moody, whose quote you see here on the slide. The CCS was a network of clergy and lay people active in the 6 years prior to Roe versus Wade. Between 1967 and 1973, these faithful people, there were about 1,400 of them, organized across 38 states. And during that time, helped nearly 500,000 pregnant people access safe abortion care. After Roe, these clergy and some of their denominational leaders helped form what was then named the Religious Coalition for Abortion Rights, or RCAR, in 1974. And if there's anyone who knew us when we were RCAR, please put that in the chat too. We'd love to see if there are folks who are joining us from back in the day. Some of our founding members included the Episcopal Church, the Union for Reform Judaism, the National Council of Jewish Women, the Unitarian Universalist Association, the United Church of Christ, and many other organizations affiliated with various Jewish, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Methodist denominations, among others. In our early days, RCRC created a lot of different programs. Some of them I wanted to share with you. One was the Women of Color Partnership Program in the 1980s. And then in the 1990s, RCRC co-sponsored a meeting of 30 Indigenous women where the agenda for Native women's reproductive rights was created. In 1993, RCRC intentionally began to broaden its focus to include all of the many issues that impact our reproductive lives, like economic justice and racial justice. And so in 1994, RCRC renamed itself the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, or RCRC, to reflect this expanded organizational mission. You're going to hear a lot about our current programs in just a few minutes. And as context, I wanted to share some of the values that guide what we do. At RCRC, we honor the moral authority of every person to make reproductive decisions for their lives and their bodies, their families, and their futures. We oppose all barriers to reproductive healthcare that's comprehensive, and we challenge all systems of oppression that impede human flourishing. We teach compassion to promote justice and to break down stigma, shame, and judgment. And we promote true religious liberty, which upholds the rights of all people, regardless of faith tradition or no faith tradition, to exercise their conscience. If you are on this webinar, I imagine that these are values that resonate with you too. We are so glad that you're here and look forward to being in conversation with you today and in the coming days. Asha, back to you.
Thank you so much, Katie. And you'll be hearing more from Katie in just a few moments. But next up, I'd like to introduce you to Reverend Dr. Kari Jackson. As RCRC's Director of Spiritual Care and Activism, she equips religious and community leaders with the educational and spiritual resources to help them advocate effectively for reproductive freedom as a vital aspect of human dignity. Welcome, Kari.
Thank you, Asha. I am so very, very glad to be here with all of you. And we have over 100 of you so far, and I know you're still coming in. I am so honored to work with RCRC. I began as a consultant, helping RCRC make some very significant organizational change, and it has been my pleasure to then convert to staff. So I want to share with you 2 points that I hope frame our conversation today. The first one is from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. Procrastination is still the thief of time." Hear these words. Fast, deliberate action must be coupled to thoughtful analysis and appreciation of systemic context. That is so much of what we seek to do within RCRC. And so you will hear about the educational programs that we offer because we want people to understand the systemic context and engage in thoughtful analysis so that the deliberate action we take really will help resolve the issues. And so here's some of the issues. And I'm so amazed these past 2 days, the Congress has passed legislation, one to codify the rights of the LGBTQ community and same gender marriage, and the other to codify the rights to contraception. And one might say, well, couldn't those things have been done a while ago? One might ask the question, well, it's only been 100 years that efforts for the Equal Rights Amendment have been moving in and around Congress and not being made into law. So now we're in a moment where fast, deliberate action must be taken. So this decision to overturn Roe v. Wade Justice Sonia Sotomayor offers some important words for us. We do not believe that a government controlling all private choices is compatible with a free people. Whatever the exact scope of the coming laws, one result of today's decision is certain: the curtailment of women's rights and of their status as free and equal citizens. Yay, Justice Sotomayor. Thank you for framing it in those ways, for indeed, this is the moment we are in. And so as we think about this particular context right now, it is important that we be honest with ourselves about the history of laws, the history of policies that have really been aimed both at the curtailment of women's rights, the curtailment of their status as free and equal citizens, but not women alone. Also looking very intersectionally at the curtailment of rights and free and equal citizenship for people of color. And we have to be honest about those things. There are some things many of us really would rather not know. We would rather stay in a belief that this nation was always founded on the principles of equality and justice. And the truth is that is not so. One dear colleague of mine, as he describes himself, a large cisgender white male, and gregarious, he includes that about himself as well. He acknowledges that so much of the laws, the policies in this nation have been for him and for people who look like him. And so in our work within RCRC, while we are so centered on reproductive freedom and dignity, we do so in a way that recognizes how critical it is to do that with an intersectional lens, and for us to do that in ways that lift up all people. Asha, back to you.
Thank you for that informative and engaging overview. I love that quote from Justice Sotomayor, the coming laws. It really puts that into context for all of us. And what we've just heard from Katie and Kari wonderfully frames this moment for us, understanding the fierce urgency of reproductive freedom and dignity. The staff today are sharing about the important work RCRC is doing, responding to, and helping to lead us in this critical moment for our inclusive interfaith community. Don't forget, as you are listening throughout this hour, please post your questions in the Q&A box and upvote any questions you are most interested in. Now I'll hand it back to Katie Zay, who is going to talk about her new book, A Complicated Choice, which is available now from Broadleaf Books, as well as a new program we recently launched called Abortions Welcome.
Thank you, Asha. I'm honored to be sharing about some of the work that we were engaged in and preparing for the time that we are in now. These two projects, my book, A Complicated Choice, Making Space for Grief and Healing in the Pro-Choice Movement, and our Abortions Welcome resource, were actually born the same week in February. My book came out February 15th of this year, and the beta site for Abortions Welcome released on February 16th. That wasn't planned, and yet it makes so much sense looking back on it because they were envisioned together around a very similar gap and need. And that was to create beautiful, inclusive spaces for people having abortion experiences where they could show up and have their full humanity embraced, affirmed, and supported. Just so incredibly important now too. I wrote my book, A Complicated Choice, during the first year of the pandemic. I had the opportunity to interview 19 people about their abortion experiences. And specifically, I wanted to talk with them about their emotional life during that time. What support did they have along their journeys, or what support did they wish they'd had? And if they experienced any sense of complicated feelings or grief or loss around their abortion or the circumstances surrounding it, what did their healing look like? It's very much an abortion storytelling book. And my hope is that by opening up this space for our full human experiences, that there can be some much needed healing that happens in the reading of the book. And I also hope that for people reading it who have not personally experienced abortion, it can help all of us begin to dismantle what's referred to as internalized abortion stigma. How do we identify and start to challenge our assumptions about people who have abortions and replace those judgments with compassion? Just today, I asked on Instagram, and I would love for you to follow me there, a question to people. What are the stigmatizing things that we often hear from people about abortion that are well-intended, but are actually very stigmatizing? And I've had a really hard time keeping up with the responses. There are so many things that we say that we don't realize are harmful. So I hope that my book will help facilitate some healing. It's a guide for starting that journey of dismantling abortion stigma, and it's good both for your just personal reflection and also for group work. There's a free discussion guide on my publisher's website that's Broadleaf Books that you can check out, and the book is available everywhere books are sold. And of course, we always encourage you to support your local independent bookstore when possible, and encourage your local library system to carry the book so it's accessible to more people. As I was writing A Complicated Choice, I was in deep conversation with my good friend and podcast co-host, Ashley Peterson. We do a podcast called Kindreds, and Ashley is the founder and former executive director of Faith in Women in Mississippi. Faith in Women has been a partner of RCRC since it started 7 years ago. And we decided that we wanted to talk with people who had experienced abortions about what would have been helpful to them in terms of spiritual resources and care before, during, and after their abortion experiences. So based on their responses, we began to develop our pro-choice spiritual companion website called Abortion's Welcome. Abortion's Welcome is full of spiritual resources like rituals, readings, meditations, soundscapes, playlists to help people feel less alone in their abortion journey. Users can browse by mode like create, touch, move, breathe, and they can also browse by topic like elements of nature, stories and perspectives, and body movement and pain relief. We've also included links to up-to-date medical, legal, and practical support organizations and resources to ensure that anyone coming to our site who needs accurate information about abortion is going to find it there, particularly people who are going through medication abortions. So I hope you'll visit abortionswelcome.org. First, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, cozy, lovely site, and it's a great resource to have just in your back pocket if you or someone you know needs help navigating their abortion experiences. You can also follow our Abortions Welcome Instagram account and stay connected there. That's it for me for right now. I'm going to introduce you to my colleague, Dr. Elizabeth Fries, who's the Associate Director of our Religion and Repro Learning Center, who will be joined again by Carrie Jackson. They're going to talk about the offerings in our Learning Center. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Katie. And I just want to say, as the new kid at RCRC, I'm thrilled to be a part of this team and very much excited to be a part of this community today. So Dr. Jackson spoke about the immediate new context that we're in, but it's also really important to be aware on the positive side that the majority of religious people are actually positive. They are pro-choice, they are pro-reproductive freedom. And so Fred Clarkson at PRA talks about that as a sleeping giant, politically and culturally. So the RCRC Religion and Repro Learning Center can in many ways be understood as an entity that is working to maximize and mobilize the power of that sleeping giant, and also to care for the people who are particularly negatively impacted by the laws that we have seen in the past and that we are seeing now. So I'm just going to give you an overview of the Learning Center, and we encourage you, of course, to go there and explore for yourself in more depth. So the Learning Center, as with all things RCRC, is dedicated to inspiring and equipping people of faith to do the cultural, the organizational, the educational, and the advocacy work that goes into this movement overall. And so our audiences generally are religious leaders who serve as pastors and educators, lay leaders and activists who organize and advocate in congregations as well as the public square. Academics whose research and courses can be enriched by a lot of the materials that we have. And really any individuals who are curious and want to learn more to inform their conversations and their actions in daily life. So the needs that we've identified among our various audiences include clearly the need to develop pastoral care capacities in general to help people who are dealing with abortion or related circumstances, but also I think with regard to the broader pastoral concerns that are impacting, people well outside those who are immediately most impacted. We need to understand the role of religion, for good or ill, in the politics and culture of our time around repro issues. People need to understand the ways that religion itself is problematic, and also to emphasize the ways that it can serve love, compassion, justice, and liberation. We really want to highlight those. And as colleagues have mentioned, we want to help people understand the ways that reproductive oppression is inherently an intersectional issue. You can't really deal with reproductive oppression effectively if you're not also dealing with things like white supremacy and patriarchy and economic disempowerment and exploitation. But at the same time, those who are working to impact justice issues more broadly in those areas and others, immigration, for example, need to recognize that the reproductive issues are also integral to those issues. So we really want to make sure that that we move past the isolation of reproductive issues from other justice concerns, and we consistently put those things together and we explain how they go together and then how you can take action that's effective on multiple levels at once. So the details of the Learning Center itself, the components, I will turn it over to Reverend Dr. Jackson first to talk about some of the history and the compassionate care that was kind of the origin story of the Learning Center, which has now become this comprehensive faith and repro resource, as well as kind of a community center.
Back in 1984, RCRC, as it was our car back then, developed a program called All Options Counseling. At the time, it had a specific focus for training clergy to companion individuals as they were making reproductive decisions. Over the years, it was recognized that people also experienced reproductive losses. And so the name was expanded to cover reproductive decisions and losses. But still, initially, the focus was only on clergy providing the kind of pastoral care that one might need in those times. In the past few years, we recognized a couple of things. One, that a lot of people have reproductive decisions and experience reproductive losses, and it's not always clergy with whom they share their particular journey and share the kinds of spiritual struggles and questions that they might have. It might be a nurse or a physician, or it might be an attorney if they have legal issues they're dealing with, or a social worker, etc. And so then we expanded the program to call it compassionate care, looking at reproductive decisions and loss, but then bringing together a cross-section of professionals and volunteers, because we also include clinic escorts in the training. So for a few years, we continued offering that in real space as it had been offered since 1984. And a couple of years ago, I guess in 2000, in 2019, we began saying, we really need to develop this into an online format so that even more people can be able to access the materials. And so it was in the course of developing an online platform specifically for compassionate care that we said, oh, wait a minute, there's a whole realm of other educational, informational, and inspirational opportunities we can make available. And then from that, we developed the Learning Center as we have it now. The Learning Center was launched in December of last year, and we are delighted. We have over 300 students who have signed up for it already. But I want to tell you specifically about compassionate care and what it offers. We seek to help individuals who are experiencing reproductive decisions, challenges, losses, and other kinds of crises to be supported in ways that really support human dignity. It might be so often, and I was told this some years ago by my spouse, I appreciate the ways you were trying to help, but that wasn't helpful. And so we seek with compassionate care training to help individuals who seek to be helpful to really know the most effective ways of being helpful. And so we provide training in a few formats. It can be a 2-day training or 1.5-day training that's in person, or we can do hybrid to do some in person and some using our online formats. And then we can do it all online using what we have in the Learning Center. We've got some fantastic courses in there that we hope you'll access. Even if you do not do or don't plan to do compassionate care in a professional sense, it is important for all of us to know how to journey with someone whose experience might be very different from ours. And so we look at things such as power dynamic differentials that there might be. And those are important things for all of us, particularly in this time where we seek to develop collaborations and allyship. It is often the case, because of how each of us has been socialized, that we think we're showing up as effective collaborators, think we're showing up as effective allies. And there may be some ways in which we are showing up and some assumptions that we make about others that we really don't recognize as hurtful and really slowing, impeding the process of compassionate care or collaboration. So check it out, whether you believe you will be companioning someone or if you are interested in collaborating, there'll still be some important resource for you. Dr. Freeze, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. So that was the beginning of the Learning Center and the courses. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about the other elements of the Learning Center. Reverend Dr. Jackson and others who contributed very generously got to work creating numerous courses that you can see when you go to the courses tab for the Learning Center. And so the courses are both sometimes individual courses, and then also there are some tracks, so which include several courses together. You get a deal if you want to go do several at once. And you'll have access to those courses for an entire year. So you can go back to the material. If you're an educator, you can draw upon that material yourself, videos and other resources within the courses. So those are kind of the long form of the resources in the Learning Center. And then just to go over a couple of the topics, in those courses. Compassionate care, obviously. Literacy, religious literacy about different faiths and how they engage with reproductive issues. Then there are some that are more specific with regard to theology and ethics around issues of repro. And then getting into, as we've been saying, a little bit more like history and sociology issues and legal issues that bring these understanding of these systems of oppression and repro together. So those are just that's a broad brush look at the kinds of topics that are in there. Also, I want to mention that RCRC is one of the members of the Sacred Coalition, so the Spiritual Alliance of Communities for Reproductive Dignity, and the Sacred Gathering, which was held earlier this year. The videos from that gathering are in the form of a course on the Learning Center. So if you're interested in that, please check that out. And we also have been involved in the development of the Sacred Curriculum and in developing materials to support that curriculum. So we work closely with Sacred along those lines in terms of education. And then other resources, webinars that RCRC has held over the past couple of years are all on the Learning Center. You can see through the webinars tab. And then there's ongoing development of communities trainings and other webinars in the future. So look for those. There will be recordings of them after the fact, and then you can also join them live. In the library, there are numerous, and again, this is crowdsourced. So just amazing generosity from people who have suggested resources or pass things along in the course of doing one of their courses for us. So there are articles, there are books, sermons, spiritual teachings, rituals, just many, many things in the library that you may find useful. And all of these things are ongoing, and you can contribute. There's a place for you to suggest a resource to add to the library. And the new programming that we're developing from this incredible wealth of material includes micro learning videos. So we are pulling some clips from some of the longer videos that we have to make those accessible outside of the longer courses. We're also including those sometimes in what we're calling topic bundles, so that can kind of respond to an immediate issue. Like if people are particularly interested in issues around personhood or compassionate care or whatever, then we are going to provide people with suggestions about courses, some micro videos, articles, websites, things like that. And then we're going to be coordinating that with our social media and email communications in order to send those out to people, but also individuals can come to us and say, well, I'm working on such and such, and in my congregation or in my course or something. And I'd really be interested in several resources that speak to this particular topic. So we can kind of help you, like librarians, find the resources that you need for what you're doing. So we would love to hear from people, both in terms of resources you might be interested in sharing with us, but also things that you would love to see us offer to add. Please let us know. And I will now turn it back to Asha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Kari. And the last program we are excited to share with you all today is Spiritual Youth for Reproductive Freedom, also known by its acronym SERV. This was originally a program of RCRC back in the early 2000s and was discontinued because of a lack of funding. Last fall, as we anticipated what was coming from the Supreme Court regarding the Dobbs v. Jackson case decision, we took the bold step of relaunching SERV, not because we had acquired a pot of money, but because we knew we needed to galvanize more young people. And if you've been paying attention to the way Gen Z especially are changing the narrative with pro-choice content on TikTok and other social media platforms, perhaps like me, you will be encouraged to know the future of reproductive freedom and bodily autonomy is in good hands. This is truly an intergenerational movement here. It is my honor to introduce you to one of the SERV student organizers, Rose Miller. Rose is a recent graduate of Wellesley College and will begin her master's in theological studies at Harvard University this fall. Welcome, Rose.
Hello, thank you so much, Asha, for the wonderful introduction. And I'm so excited to see there are so many people here. Hello. I'm always excited to talk about surf, but particularly so today. We engage in spiritually based pro-choice activism based on a deep understanding of the intersections of reproductive freedom and all justice issues with religion and spirituality. We're on academic campuses across the United States, and we provide multi-faith fellowship for students, regardless of their faith, to integrate their spirituality with their pursuit for reproductive justice. My job is to both build SURF as an organization through outreach and also to help students who come to us find a home in the movement for reproductive freedom. Some recent successes include establishing a chapter on the Wheaton campus. We also have chapters on other places across the country, including at Wellesley, my alma mater, and our Massacre Generation webinar series, which was a two-part series where we had a series of speakers linking gun violence, reproductive freedom, and faith, and then a follow-up webinar. It was kind of a community roundtable. I am so excited about this work personally, because as a young student and as a young person generally in the world, for me, my faith is inextricably tied with my reproductive freedom activism. I didn't have a place to organize around issues of reproductive freedom that was respectful of and integrated my faith. I really felt like I had to choose between the two. And with SURF, students don't have to choose. We're bringing students into the fold who may not otherwise have an opportunity to organize or may not otherwise find an opportunity to organize in a space that really integrates their faith into the conversation. Our chapters have helped students volunteer as clinic escorts and have helped students create theological justifications for their beliefs about reproductive freedom, showing that for young people who are at this critical stage of growth and development, that being pro-choice can be compatible with their faith. And right now we are developing talking points for youth leaders in their communities to be able to do outreach and make sure that they feel well prepared to talk to people about why exactly they are pro-choice and students of faith. Anyone who is the youth or who works with youth is welcome to contact us to create a chapter, whether it is on a campus, in a community center, or part of a congregation. If you're interested in starting a chapter, you can visit rcrc.org/surf, and the link is on the slide right now at the bottom, and fill out the form at the bottom of the page once you click on the link. As a student going into my master's program, I am so grateful for all the opportunities that SURF and the RCRC have afforded me. My work with SURF informs all aspects of my life, the political, the personal, the academic, and more. And I hope SURF will be as meaningful for you and the lives of those around you as it has been for me. And we welcome everybody who wants to be involved. So I'm going to hand it back to you now, Asha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose. That was wonderful. And once again, I invite everyone who is watching live to post your questions in the Q&A box so we can respond to them right after our next discussion of ways you can get involved. With that being said, I'd now like to introduce you to Melanie Bowie Larson, our Communications Director, who is going to share more information about how you can get involved and share specific calls to actions we want to give our community in response to what we are seeing in the country today. We've actually had an increased amount of inquiries recently from people wanting to take action and join us in this fight. So here is Melanie to give you all the tools you need.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I want to say that the easiest and probably most important way that you can help the movement right now is to donate to your local abortion funds or grassroots organizations. These people have been here on the ground doing the work for a while. They have the infrastructure and the plan, and they just need help. And to that end, a one-time donation is great, but consider a sustaining or recurring donation as well, to help keep the work going longer, even if interest begins to kind of die down after this particular moment. Also, we always recommend people contact and urge your local representatives to vote yes on the Women's Health Protection Act and also the Equal Rights Amendment. Also, as far as RCRC stuff is concerned, please, if you're not already, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is RC Our Choice on all three. We share a lot of content there and various calls to actions and ways to get involved. Subscribe to our action alerts through our website if you're not already part of that. And also go ahead and register for our Religion and Repro Learning Center. It's free to create an account there, and you'll be able to have access to a lot of our free offerings as well. There are free online courses, webinars, the resource library that was mentioned earlier, that you'll be able to just organize and access better with an account. And lastly, I know that a lot of you are having questions about and eager to get involved in our community trainings, in SURF and everything like that. So please keep an eye out. We will send a follow-up email after today to gauge your interest level and what areas you most want to get involved in, and give you opportunities to plug into the work that makes the most sense for you. So yeah, you'll be hearing us from us again in the next day or so with that. And yeah, so thank you very much. And I am handing it back to you, Asha.
Thank you, Mel. Well, as promised, we have a short amount of time to answer some of your questions. Please feel free to continue putting them in the Q&A section, and I will direct your questions to the right staff member as we try to get through as many as we can. All our staff members are going to come back on camera now. Just please know that if we are not able to get to your specific question, we will still use all of those posted to inform how we can continue to reach out and better engage our growing community. So first up, we have a question from Ed, which has been upvoted. And Ed asks, how can those of us in states that have reproductive freedom best help those who need abortion care but live in a state where that is illegal? So I'm going to throw it open to our staff and see who wants to answer that question.
I'd like to jump in on that one. One of the things that is very important right now is to support the reproductive health providers in those states. They are struggling very much. They're trying to keep their doors open, even though they've lost a portion of their income. They're trying to keep their staff in place. They are doing incredible legislative advocacy, as they have been over the last several years. And they're still doing that. And so they're often dividing their time between going to their state legislatures and operating their medical practices, et cetera. And some also provide training for physicians who want to learn how to perform a safe abortion care. I mean, there's so many of those tremendous challenges that are happening. If you're part of a clergy network within your own state, talk about ways that you can connect with clergy networks in states where the bans are happening and be able to partner with them. Those kinds of connections are really important. And one of the things, one of the providers said to me within the last week or so was, it's really important for folks to not ask publicly, how can we participate in some more clandestine activities? It's really important not to have those conversations publicly. It will jeopardize what everyone is striving to do. We're not in the era when the Clergy Consultation Service was operating in the 1960s. This is not that era. There's a lot of criminalization of conversation. This is kind of pre-Roe plus Comstock laws all combined. And so we're learning some new ways to be in this era. But any ways that you can support clergy networks, reproductive justice networks, and reproductive health care providers in states where those bans are. Those are my recommendations. Katie or others, I don't know if you have some as well.
Yes, I'd love to jump in and say another thing that you can do is to make sustaining donations to the abortion funds, both in your states and in the states where people are having to leave. Now, I know some abortion funds have stopped operating right now because the law is unclear, but it's still really important to think about both the immediate and the long-term need that there's going to be for resources to get people to the places where they can receive the care that they need. So really making those sustaining donations, not just one time, but over time is really important. You can go to NNAF, the National Network of Abortion Funds.org/funds and find the ones in your state or in a state that you're interested in supporting. I also want to encourage everyone, and I will put this link in the chat. There is a group of us who is working together across different faith-based organizations in the repro space around how to build networks of people who are interested in doing this work locally and creating the kinds of networks that we're going to need. So I'm going to put that in the chat here. It's a sign up form. RCRC is one of the sponsors, and that will get you on a list specifically around people who are interested in doing the kind of direct service work. So I'll put that in the chat right now.
Thank you so much for answering that. And Hilary, I know you had asked what ways can we get involved with the work of RCRC in our local context. I hope some of Katie's question answers your question as she gives more information. This next question is related to what both of you, Kari and Elizabeth, Katie had just mentioned. Is RCRC prepared to address lawsuits arising as a result of any service you provide? This is obviously something a lot of people are thinking about. Who would like to go?
I can jump in first and say we are working very closely with our good friends at the Law, Rights, and Religion Project of Columbia Law School, both on this issue and also those people who are interested in actually filing lawsuits around religious liberty in this issue. So they're a really wonderful resource that we are working with. So I would encourage you to look them up. And if you are someone or someone in your congregation is interested in pursuing a lawsuit around religious liberty, they are very eager to talk to you.
Okay, the next question is from Linda Myers. How would compassionate care mesh with medical abortion companionships? Before or with? Maybe I'll hand that over to Dr. Fries or Reverend Dr. Jackson, since you were talking about compassionate care earlier.
Well, thank you for that question. As we've shared with you, there is the Abortions Welcome website that people can walk through independently. And it is also an incredible resource for individuals who seek to companion someone who is going through an abortion experience. Most of what we're talking about in that context is medical abortion. But the reality is, because of the stigmatizing and shaming that is so prevalent in this country as it relates to abortion, and Katie's book is important to that. So encourage folks to read that book, because I think it can provide some really valuable insight. Through compassionate care, we specifically look at, regardless of what method someone might terminate a pregnancy, and even if they have gone through an involuntary termination of pregnancy. So whether they chose it or they did not choose the cessation of their pregnancy, people, because of the stigmatizing in this culture, having someone journey with you spiritually is really important. So if you're interested in journeying with someone, participating in the compassionate care program might be a valuable resource for you, but also reading A Complicated Choice can give you some valuable insights, and also perusing Abortions Welcome website. Any of those three can be really valuable.
And I would just add that there are also online courses on compassionate care in the Learning Center that you can do independently, and then move from there to the more advanced and in-person work.
Thank you for that. We have another question from Jan Whitted. Is there any program for reaching out to medical doctors with these resources? I hear you laughing, Carrie.
So right now we work with the American Medical Students Association. We have been providing training to medical students because we know even before the Dobbs decision, there was an absolute dearth of information in medical schools about how to journey with someone who is considering terminating their pregnancy. And most doctors, because, well, as you know, in some states, doctors were not allowed, or there was so much pressure against doctors participating in providing abortion care, such that states like Mississippi for the last several years have had to rely upon doctors who lived in other states to come on a rotational basis to Mississippi. And that's been happening in other states as well because of the kind of pressure that there is for doctors not to provide comprehensive holistic care, and especially doctors who serve in hospitals that are owned by religious organizations. There's been particular pressure for them. But the American Medical Association has been operating with a different perspective for years, very different perspective from the one that they had 150 years ago, where the AMA, Dr. Horatio Storer in particular, were the first ones to say that abortion was murder. It was not religious leaders. And for those of you who don't know that, I think that's a really important point. But the AMA has a very different perspective now. They're not trying to push out doulas and midwives, which was so much of the orientation back in the late 1800s. And so now the medical profession on the whole is so much more supportive, and many physicians have participated in legislative hearings only for their science-based testimonies to have been completely disregarded. That has been happening in state after state. And so we're hoping that organizations like Physicians for Reproductive Health and RCRC, in our collaborations, we can do even more together. And I don't know, Katie, if you want to add any more on that.
I think that was a very good summary. Thank you, Carrie.
Well, this next question will be for Rose. SURF sounds like a wonderful resource. What are some of the things the individual chapters might organize in their meetings?
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for the question. Some things we've done in the past, I think I mentioned briefly that we've worked as volunteers at clinics, being escorts, which is obviously really helpful. The goal is to both provide a place to be activists and be activists in training, and also to provide a place for community and compassion. And so chapter meetings are usually a mixture of the two. Some things that might happen is you might partner with the campus college Democrats organization, for example, and work on lobbying initiatives in the state legislature. You might be able to organize like a roundtable meeting at your university about the resources for abortion and contraception that are there, and how students of faith might be included in that conversation more than they are now. On the other hand, at the first meeting at Wellesley College, we just talked about why we were pro-choice and also why our faith was so important. And I think really providing a space to have these conversations in a casual environment where there's no pressure, not only creates a sense of community, but also helps people see that, oh, there are other students who are of faith who really believe in this deep interconnection between faith and reproductive freedom work. So, you know, on that side of things, there's conversations, there's board game nights, movie nights, that sort of thing. So it's really a mixture of organizing work proper and also community building stuff, and just being in community with other students who share this conviction.
Thank you so much, Rose. And just for anyone who's asking in the chat, if you weren't here at the beginning, this is being recorded, so you will be able to share it after the fact. This question comes from Rachel. I would love to see more Jewish resources on your website. Orthodox women have been sharing their abortion stories, and clergy do allow abortion, even if they aren't publicizing it. I hope to reach out more. This session was so affirming of my religious faith and deep belief in reproductive justice. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for that question, Rachel. I'm going to throw it open to the staff who would like to answer that one.
Mel?
I'll say, for one thing, that we have some wonderful Jewish members of the board, and also that partner significantly with NCJW, and we are actively working to build those resources. But for sure, if anyone has things that they find particularly meaningful and helpful, we would love for you to send them our way, and we will get them in the Learning Center. But Carrie, would you like to speak to that more?
Yeah, in the Learning Center, we have a few courses that specifically speak from a Jewish perspective, and one course that introduces people to Judaism. So people don't presume they know about Judaism, but to really learn about it and perspectives on reproduction. There's so much for Christians in particular to learn about biblical text and approaches to reproduction that that come from Judaism. And what we really appreciate, and one of the things we lift up in one of the courses in the Learning Center, is the reality that pronatalism and reproductive freedom do not have to be at odds with one another. We can be a society that supports people as they may choose to become pregnant, to raise children, etc. But it's not just about the pronatalism. Then, what do we do in supporting people beyond the birth is something we're not good at in this culture. But that need not be antithetical to individuals who recognize that for their own wholeness, and that's so much we get from Jewish perspective, about the well-being of the person who is pregnant, their wholeness. And I just want to say, as a Christian minister, for those of you who have heard from the text in Matthew that God was saying, be perfect as I am perfect, that translation is incorrect. It is, be whole as I am whole. And that's what in RCRC we're striving, is to help people be whole. And Reverend Katie said at the top of our time, we're really focusing on human flourishing. And so any ways from any tradition we can lift that up and support that, we're ready to do so. Sorry, I'm a preacher, so apologies.
Bring it. We want to hear all the wisdom you can bring. Well, thank you everyone for answering the questions, to all the staff members, and to everyone who asked questions. I want to say a huge thank you. As we wrap up here, I just want to remind you that we will take the rest of the questions that went unanswered on board to better prepare ourselves for the future that is right here and now. Our entire RCRC staff is so honored that you joined us in this special community gathering today. Keep an eye out for a special follow-up email that we will send to you soon about specific ways for you to be involved, and a recap of this recording, which you can share with more people in your network. As always, like Melanie said before, follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already, and visit rcrc.org to get familiar with all our programs and the ongoing action we are taking to advocate for reproductive freedom, dignity, and bodily autonomy. We will see you next time.
Thank you.